What was the creepiest thing someone said on the first date? Friend told me the guy not only asked for a selfie but posted on Facebook with the caption "My Queen." First time meeting. Jon Snow's edit again. Mid-date he placed his hand on my stomach and said my son will grow here. Beep that. No. Don't beep that. Called their mom in front of me to say they met a real winner and how they were done with their ex. Not sure if this counts, but it was really uncomfortable. That happened on a first date? Wow. That sounds incredibly awkward. Yeah. Never called the guy again because I was so weirded out. I don't blame you. Yikes. Poor guy had to call his mom and tell her he was wrong again. I love Asian girls. They remind me of children. That isn't a red flag. That's a red banner. It's not a red flag. It's a red light. Then a blue light. Then red again. Then blue. And a loud wee woo noise. I invited my ex to join us for lunch. WTF? And did the ex show up? She did show up. We went to McDonald's. The ex was really nice and tried to make things less awkward. She didn't know it was a date. She thought she was just meeting with her ex for lunch and she was shocked that I was there. Whilst my date was in the bathroom, the ex confided in me that she was hoping to get back together. I told her that's fine because I had no interest whatsoever at this point. There was no second date and those two ended up back together a few weeks later. Edit to explain more. We met at his house first and he was taking me out to lunch somewhere surprise. I didn't know it was McDonald's until we pulled into the car park. He didn't mention having invited his ex until we were already there and she showed up soon after. I would have left before she got there, but he took me there in his car and it would have been quite an expensive taxi back to his house to get my car. After lunch he took me back to his house and the ex came in the car too. He tried to put a movie on but I insisted on leaving. He then took my car keys off the bench and locked himself in his bedroom while he hid them from me. I did get a bit scared at this point. His housemate helped me find my keys while my date started the movie with his ex and I left without saying anything more. Okay. That is weird as hell. Bullet dodged by the sound of it though. I want you to carve your initials on my thigh with a knife. She was very serious. Well. How else are you supposed to carve your initials on her thigh? Ballpoint pen and time. I told this guy I played the piano. And like half an hour later he said, if I wanted you to always remember me, I'd break your ring fingers. You know. 'Cause they don't heal well and then you'd always think of me when playing. Suffice to say, I left the restaurant fairly quickly. Good God, what a horrific thought to have. And then to decide it was a good idea to vocalize that. I hope you never had the misfortune of seeing him again. She was driving us back home from the restaurant and started saying things like, yeah, no. You're in my car now, I technically can take you wherever I want. You're like my prisoner. I laughed the first time she mentioned it because I'm into dark humor, but when she kept going on with it, little did she know once I got out of the car that would be the last time she'd ever see me. Well. It was the last time you saw her. Well played. He wanted to go for a walk at the park with me at 4 a.m. So when I said no, he said, "Don't worry. I won't rape you." And gave me a twisted smile. I'm just gonna assume the second date was not granted. Nope. He creeped me out so badly I made up a lie that I got back with my ex who doesn't like me talking to other men, and then I blocked him on everything social media possible, lol. showed me a long list on her phone of, if I can guess without exaggeration, at least 60 to 70 baby names for when she has a kid. And joked about having baby fever. They were all really country bumpkin names like Brecken and Gatlin too. Which somehow made it more unpalatable for me. Undefined. I don't blame you for breaking up with her. He wouldn't have Gatlin along with her too well. He told me he could rape me if he wanted. He wasn't joking. My ex would tell me this all the time. I'm so sorry. It's beeping terrifying. The guy I commented about wasn't joking. I was so frightened, and I've had another man about 30 years older than me joke about raping me whilst he groped me, which was almost as frightening. How can they think it's okay to say these things? What the beep is wrong with people? He was in the military Canadian. I asked him if he ever did any volunteer work overseas with the military, and he said, no. I joined the military to kill people, not to help people. Chugged my beer and got out of there as fast as I could. That sounds like the kind of guy who would get a dishonorable discharge as soon he left boot camp. And then would brag how he's a veteran, flashing his obviously fake medals. Can I cut you and drink it? She was serious. It wasn't something that someone said. But he stole my credit card out of my purse when I wasn't looking. Luckily on the way home I stopped for coffee and noticed it was missing. Froze the account that second. Yikes, I had like the opposite thing happen. It wasn't a first date but a third date. We went to a fair together and I didn't want to bring my purse with because we planned to go on rides. I asked if I could put my debit card in his wallet. At the end of the date I forgot to take it back, but just as I was about to drive away he ran back to the car and gave it to me. He was really nice about it and was like, OMG, you almost forgot this. Would you have been okay? Now I wouldn't make a mistake that stupid, and I'm really glad he was a good dude. Based on your first sentence, I figured this would be a story about you stealing some guy's credit card. Look. This has to go well. Both of my brother's wives are pregnant with their second children. Do not let me down. Said to me within 3 minutes of sitting down. Could it have been a joke? The words read like a joke. But I guess it's all in the delivery. I thought it was a joke at first and tried to awkwardly laugh it off. But the tone of his voice was something I'd never heard before. He also didn't blink much, and he had the most intense, intimidating stare. Like he was trying to make me break down and confess my darkest secrets right there at the table. Some other things were said, mainly pertaining to his occupation, that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Looking back now, I feel like there's a 99% chance he was doing abusive, illegal speep at his job. And whatever he was doing would have impacted a ton of people for life. This guy wasn't talking at all, and I only brought a few talking points cause normally they talk the whole time. I didn't have anything else to say and asked him to start talking, and he said, "What I want to talk about can't be said in public." When I ended the date he thought we were going to go to my place to talk, and I said no. I got in my car, noted what car he got into, and took a few breaths to calm down. I looked around and his car was still there. I waited 30 minutes before he left the parking lot and stayed another 15 before I left. You never know. Maybe he was gonna tell you about his superhero alter ego /s. But seriously, that is a red banner, and whoever he is, I'm glad you dodged that bullet. Not what he said but what he did. He beeping stole my keys while I was out of the room and took off into the night. We had an hours-long standoff where he wouldn't answer my calls or texts begging him to return them. I stood by his truck that was parked a few blocks away making sure that he didn't leave with them. Eventually he dropped them off in my car and I got a ride home from the cops. Honestly, one of the scariest episodes of my life. But why? Did they give a reason? He contacted me years later out of the blue to apologize and explained his reasoning for leaving, though it made no sense. However, he refused to tell me why he took the keys. I'm not sure if he had your keys long enough to make a copy of them. But that was my first thought on reading this. Yikes to the whole story though. And I'm sorry that happened to you. Better lock it down now. Huh. While you're ripe for the taking. Referring to my low self-esteem that he picked up on. Went out with a girl one night, and after dinner she drove me up into the mountains. I was new to the area, and after a while, when there were no more lights, she started talking about serial killers. I still remember her saying, I used to think about getting away with stuff like that sometimes. TBF, thinking about outsmarting systems can be interesting to think through. But it's not something you talk about with people who you don't know well. Described in detail how his female commanding officer liked sex with him so much she raped him repeatedly while he was in the army. He said it with so much pride that it seemed as though it was meant to impress me. Oh. You're so hot, I bet women rape you repeatedly. Said no woman ever. When we get married I can wear this dress. First date, went back to her place, and while giving me the tour she pulled a beautiful wedding dress out of a closet and said this to me while holding it up to her body. You called it beautiful. You noticed. You noticed the dress. You're the one. It's meant to be. My son is gonna love having you around. Lady. We talked twice on Tinder and I've only known you for 5 minutes. Ease up on the stepdaddy talk. Full disclosure. Not long after I met a nice woman with 3 children. I adopted all 3 not long after we married. I met her on Tinder. I think that means the first lady was correct. She did the mistake of only having 1 child. Drove me out to the desert for a planned stargazing / bonfire thing. I know it's a dangerous first date / meeting. I was stupid and young. Once we found a good spot he turned the car off and told me, now this is where I kill you. He said it with a smile and started laughing. I'm just glad he was just joking. But doesn't make it less creepy. Within knowing each other about an hour he told me he had never wanted kids before. But the moment we met he felt it biologically. Then he told me he wanted to be my son's stepfather as well. This is not my story, but my mother's. My mom was a pioneer in online dating. She was really interested in finding someone special. She agreed to meet a guy for dinner. First mistake, and went in to be seated prior to him arriving. He came in. The waitress brought menus and he set down his menu, and the first words he spoke were asking my mom if she has ever known anyone who had a penis enlargement. He then went on to explain that he had flown cross-county for this operation and it had gone wrong. He went into great specifics about just how wrong. My mother excused herself to the ladies' room and left out the back door. We still laugh out loud when she reminds us of her search for Mr. Right. Okay, but I now need to know what went wrong and how wrong it went. A one-night stand once told me I smelled like his mom. At least it was smell and not taste. Do you gain weight easily? Why do you want to ask that? LMAO. It puts the lotion on its skin. After getting us lost on the way back to my friend's house. Late at night. In a state I was only visiting. What? Do you think I'm going to take you out into the woods and rape you? LOL. He had a loaded gun rack in his truck. And a knife on his belt. I was 15. It was not funny. Jeez. I was Joan of Arc in my former life. I wanna tear you apart. And your friend. Too. Kind of a toss-up. Imho. My name is Peaches and I'm the best. All the DJs wanna feel my breast. Beatboxes. You look just like my sister. And later in the date he admitted that's something he liked about me. Needless to say. No second date with Jamie Lannister. This was in the early 00s when I agreed to go on a date with a persistent co-worker at Target. He showed up to my house with a giant bouquet of flowers. My parents invited him in to check him out and spoke with him for a bit. His story didn't really check out. As a volunteer firefighter I flew to help on September 11th from Syracuse. No flights obviously happened, but then all of a sudden they pulled out a disposable camera. When my mom asked him what it was for, he said CHS 135 is going on vacation for a week and I want a picture to remember her by, and like from a dark comedy. We then heard the click of the shutter. I faked being suddenly sick and my mom told him I wasn't feeling well. Luckily it was only a summer job. Wait, what? Could you elaborate? Was he planning to take you on a vacation? Did he know you were leaving after because he stalks you? Why did he take a picture? My imagination runs way too wild. I make up way too many scenarios.